We're going to show you how to install the Flexstick mount on the side of a kayak where there's limited access to the back. We have a system we call a bar back system that is used to hold the bolts that attach the mount to the side of the boat, to the side of the kayak. This illustration will be to show you how to string the monofilament through the bar back that we use to mount the Flexstick Anchor mount. The bar back is a stainless steel bar, and it's got threaded holes in it. The threaded holes are used to receive the bolts that we use to mount the mount. Alongside each of these threaded holes, there's a really small little guide hole. And what we do to string this is run the monofilament through the guide hole that's right next to the bolt that we're going to use. In this case, the outer bolt hole pattern is what we use for mounting the Flexstick Anchor mount. These two inside holes are used for the Scotty mount. So we're running the first monofilament end through the guide hole next to the outside bolt hole, and then we come all the way around through the back and go back into the corresponding guide hole at the opposite end of the bar. What I have here at this point, and I started out with about 12 feet of monofilament. What I have at this point is the monofilament running through the guide holes and goes in one side of the bar, goes around the back of the bar, and comes out the guide hole at the opposite end. And as you can see, both of these ends of the monofilament are coming from the same end of the bar back. That's an important feature in the process. And to keep the bar back from sliding up and down along this monofilament as we're installing it, we take an additional loop around one of these ends, and it doesn't matter which one, by threading the monofilament through the same hole. And you see, I'm bringing it up here. I've got one wrap. I put in a second wrap to keep it from sliding. Go around again and come back to the same hole. And the important thing being that when you're through with this process, is you end up again with the string coming from the same side of the bar back. Now we're ready to install this bar back in position behind the wall of the kayak, where we can use it as the bolts or the nuts that are normally required to bolt something to the. I've already run some monofilament line through one of these bar backs, and the purpose of this line is to feed our bar back from the access point that we have in the kayak to the inside of the kayak hull, to feed it from here to the point where it's connected to our mount. In this case, we have 4 holes that have previously been drilled into the side of the kayak wall. Those holes were formed using the pattern that we have on the Flexstick Anchor mount. Now, to get this bar back in position back here, we've fashioned a little hook out of hook hanger. And this hook is used to feed the monofilament through the hole that we're going to use for our bolt holes over to this position where we have access in the kayak. And then we're going to use this wire to pull the mount back, or the bar back, into position so that we can apply the bolts and the mount. We're going to start on the bottom. There are 4 bolts in this mount configuration, so what process we're describing here will be done 4 times. And what we're doing is running our hook through the kayak. And we've got about a 4.5 foot hook. In this case, our access point is fairly close, so we have more than hook than we need. But it's just a question of putting together enough wire to reach the point where you have free access using the process that we're showing here. In this case, I've got my free end of the wire that's come through, and I'm going to take one end of the monofilament that we previously threaded through the bar back, and I'm going to attach that one end to the coat wire hook. And to keep it in place and keep it from slipping off, I'm going to use a little piece of electrical tape. That'll just keep the monofilament from sliding off as I retrieve it through the same hole that I ran the wire through. And here comes our wire. Now, I'm going to remove this. And at this point, we need to anchor this wire, this monofilament temporarily. And I'm going to use one of these pieces of electrical tape for that purpose. All right. Now, we're going to repeat the previous process for the second hole. And again, I'm going to take my hook end of this Kayak Anchor wire, run through the access point. Retrieve the free end at the access point. Now I'm going to take the opposite end of the bar back that was not already attached, and I'm going to attach this end to our hook. So as we did before, we'll just put a couple of wraps on there and get a little piece of electrical tape to hold it in place temporarily. Pull it back to the original access hole. And there we have it. Now we're through with this wire for the time being. And what we've done at this point is we've got each end of the two wires that we had previously drawn in here. Each of those is connected to the bar back. And now I'm going to put the bar back into the hull and draw it in position using the monofilament. And we've now brought the bar back into position, and it's ready to be mounted or secured to the mount. It's necessary to keep tension on these two lines as we're aligning the bar back holes with the holes in the kayak, and tape is a simple way to do it. And I maintain tension as I pull this apart, and the little guide holes next to the bolt holes in the bar back have forced the bolt holes to align with the holes in the kayak. Now we're ready to put the first set of bolts into the mount holes that were previously formed in here. So I'm going through the mount hole and slightly rotating the bolt. Well, what's happened is our line has slipped on us. Now we've pulled the hole back up into alignment, and now we're going back with our bolt. And it's caught this time. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And I'm going to do some manual pulling on this spring to help align both holes. And we started with two bolt holes in here. At this point, we can remove our monofilament, and we can tighten down the first set of bolts. And we don't want to really tighten at this point because we have to put in the second set. And to get the proper orientation of this base plate, we need to use some spacers. The ideal orientation for this base plate is such that our anchor is going to be pretty much in a vertical plane. All right, so now we've got our first set of bolts in place. The orientation is approximately correct where we want it. A little bit more will be better. Now what we're going to do is run our second bar back into place. The process is the same as we previously described. We're running the wire to the first hole over to our access point. I'm going to string the second bar back the same way I did the first one. And as we did before, we're going to pull tension on this line to bring the bar back into position against these holes. And sometimes in pulling the bar back into place, it will have wound itself around the monofilament or perhaps gone over an edge, but it can be straightened out and it'll come into the proper alignment. So it is properly aligned now, and I'm going to anchor. I'm pulling taut on this one line, and I'm going to anchor it with my electrical tape. Do the same thing on both sides. Having done that, we've got our bolt holes aligned with the holes in the. I didn't do a good job on this one. So now we go. All right, now our bolt holes are aligned and we're ready to apply the bolts for the top bar. Okay. Now we're going to be installing the top bolts into the mount, and to get the proper orientation, we're going to use spacers. And I've got 6 spacers for each of these bolts. I'm going to begin by getting my spacers aligned. Then I'm going to feed them over the bolt and then feed the bolt into the bar back. We'll come through here, feed these on. And we'll start advancing the bolt through the hole in the kayak and into the bar back. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And advance bolts into the bar back. And there we have the mount. At this point we're ready put on the anchor and we're ready to go fishing.